May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Stephan Bodian. Stephan Bodian, he is an awakening teacher. He runs an annual school for awakening. And he talks herein about the teachers he's had. The Shunryu Suzuki at Tassajara and then the city, and Chogyam Trungpa, Sokyo Rinpoche, Gene Klein, very interesting teacher. And there's others, some for longer periods of time, some for shorter. And he talks about them and his practice. Ajashanti gave him a transmission to teach. Now, if and also he's a therapist, licensed family therapist. I just looked it up. He's a psychotherapist. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist in California. However, he lives far away, and you will hear about that. And we compare faraways where we live. Now, if you want to know more about Stephan, just go to stephanbodian.org. stephanbodian.org. He's got some articles. I think I should try to get on a page for him on cuke.com. One called Remembering Kobun. Incidentally, he studied with, Kobun Chino. I didn't mention Kobun. And that was an important teacher for him. And Maizumi. I can't keep up with all of them. And he wrote an article on Maizumi, too, he said, which Tricycle didn't use. But he's got them on his blog, or, you can find them by going to his website. And I'll try to find them, get them on a page for him. And Richard Baker. He has some nice things to say about Richard Baker. There's three things I want to fill in the words here, rather than fill them in the podcast proper, which is tedious. I'm going to tell you. The first is the name of Maizumi's brother, Taizan Maizumi, whose bathtub Maizumi died in. We talk about that. Was Junyu Kuroda. And I have taken a bath in that very bathtub. The box with the coals, the hot coals that Junyu Kuroda passed out into is called a hibachi. Now, I usually could remember the name of Junyu Kuroda, and of course I know what a hibachi is, and it's just a word that, slips out of my mouth without thinking about it. However, I have attained a ripe old age, and now normal words, I just go, huh? And third, I notice when I incorrectly said Peter Warshall was the editor of Yoga Journal. No, it was Rick Fields. And we clarify there, but we just call him Rick. We don't say Rick Fields. And I explain why I got him mixed up. Anyway, well, the same sort of thing, So look, that's enough messing around here. You get an idea about Stephen. It's very interesting stuff to say. I really enjoyed talking with him. And I've been around him some in the past and way back. And I've kept up with him and his books. Hey, look, let me check out his books real quick. I want to mention them. Okay, I'm on the books section of his website. There's the one on top is Wake Up Now. I've plugged some of his books in the past, and I'll try to catch up on them. Can't keep up, even with the incredibly skilled and devoted constant work of Peter Ford and the help from Wendy Pierzig. Anyway, Wake Up Now. Anything? All right, let's get a subtitle. A Guide to the Journey of Spiritual Awakening. Nice cover. Beyond Mindfulness, the direct approach to lasting peace, happiness, and love. Meditation for Dummies, now in the 4th edition with instructional audio. Pretty good. Everyday Mindfulness, practical secrets for finding joy in each moment. My God. All right. Hey, that's a good list. And a good website, too. Well done. Okay, look, that's enough, huh? So when you hear the bell, if you've set your mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you want. And when you're ready to come back and hear the podcast, click on pause. And we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and we'll give Stephan Bodian a call.
Hello, David.
Oh, hi there. Well, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Well, very, very long time indeed.
Wow.
Thanks to you for your support of my books in the past, and the connection we've had around that. That's been great. Really appreciate it. Kind of a hand across the Zen divide. I'm on the other side somewhere, not doing traditional Zen, but I really appreciate it from your end. So
Yeah, I'm not very traditional either,
no, you never were. That was what I loved about you in the old days.
Yeah.
You know, yeah,
Well, you got to have it all, I think. I don't know. But, yeah.
yeah. I got to include all of human life, right? Isn't that the whole point?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Wow, very good. Very good. Um, so let me know what you're doing right now these days.
Well, I run an annual School for Awakening. It's called,
Hmm.
which is has taken different forms. I've been doing it since 2007, so it's about, I think this is the 18th year. I do it every year, and it's been kind of a multi-month program. It's morphed over the years. We used to meet in person like 2 or 3 times a year for a weekend retreat, and then we do phone conferencing in between. And then, with COVID, we stopped being able to do the in-person gatherings, and then we went from phone conferencing to video conferencing. And now this year it's an 8-month program. In the past we'd meet every 2 weeks. This time we're going to meet once a month. But in any case, it's teaching that takes the form of teachings, guided meditations, self-inquiry exercises, and sitting quietly for periods of time. kind of like an ongo. I consider it a kind of, my little version of an ongo that people, that
Right.
people can do, and
Right.
lay people can do, and it really comes from my own understanding, my own experience primarily, but of course it draws on teachings from Zen, Advaita, Dzogchen. My primary, of course, I spent 10 years, in Zen intensively as a monk, but
Yeah.
then my main teacher was Jean Klein, who was a teacher of Advaita Vedanta,
Yeah.
um, mixed with Kashmir Shaivism, I would add, because he wasn't a world-denying Advaitin, he was a world-loving and embracing Advaitin,
Well,
and
what's Kashmir? What? Say it again.
Kashmir Shaivism.
Kashmir, right?
Kashmiri Shaivism, Kashmiri Tantra. It really was the predecessor of Tibetan Tantra,
No kidding.
and it's practiced in Kashmir, obviously, and it's I'm not an expert on it, so I'm just talking about what little I know, but it embraces it's non-dual in the ultimate sense. It embraces everything. The good, the bad, the up, the down, all of life, Shiva Shakti, the whole Shakti piece, the
Yeah.
whole manifestation piece, which is essentially what Zen does. I mean, supposed to do, doesn't
Hmm.
always in practice, but basic Zen teachings are all embracing, completely non-dual, the
Hmm.
shit stick, right? Uh, right? So
Right.
it's all embraced.
Yeah.
Um, so in that sense, Jean was more a teacher of Zen, and when I met him, I didn't know anything about Advaita Vedanta, but a friend introduced me to him, and I met him. Went to a workshop he gave, and then I met him in person. So I first met Jean. He was very much he was not a Buddhist at all. He wasn't a Zen guy. He was not a Buddhist. But when I met him face to face, I thought, this is a real Zen master. Whatever he's got, I want it.
Yeah.
And so that's how I've generally been drawn. I mean, that's how I was thinking today, since we're doing this under the auspices of Cuke, I was, thinking about my connection with Suzuki Roshi.
Yeah.
And, I started practicing in New York at the New York Zen Study Society
Yeah.
with Edo Roshi,
Yeah.
back when he was Taisan,
Yeah.
just a little bit. And then I was going off to graduate school after college,
Hmm.
and I was trying to choose a graduate school, it's either Yale or Stanford,
Hmm.
and and then someone somehow gave me a brochure about Tassajara. I don't know if you remember that brochure, that thing that folded out
Sure.
into that big thing, and there are pictures of Suzuki Roshi and walls and gardens, and it was this incredible thing. And I saw a picture of Suzuki Roshi. I said, I want to study with that guy. He's got it. Whatever it is, I want to study with him. And that's why I went to Stanford. I went to Stanford so I could go to Tassajara, actually.
Wow.
Uh,
So
yeah.
what year
So,
was that?
well, I moved out in 1970, the summer of 1970, and I landed in San Francisco at the end of August, just in time to do a sesshin with Roshi,
Mm.
Suzuki Roshi. And then the following year, I did 2 more sesshins with Suzuki Roshi. And then I was going to go to Tassajara the fall of 71. Of course, Roshi got cancer and died, and he didn't make it to Tassajara.
Were you there
But
in the fall of '71? Pardon me
I
for
was.
asking. I was there.
You were there, yeah. That's probably where we first met.
Yeah.
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 And then and I also distinctly remember the mountain seat ceremony with Dick Baker,
Yeah.
where Roshi was out there with his staff, and Hoitsu was holding him up, and
Yeah.
crying, and that was seared into my memory. I've never forgotten it. It was to me, such a manifestation of devotion to the Dharma. It was like whoa, So these are powerful memories, and being drawn, to a teacher like that. Even though I didn't get to study with him much, it was an important connection for me. Of course, Kobun was my main teacher for a number of years.
Go on.
I'm sorry?
You said Kobun was your main teacher?
Kobun, yeah,
Well,
Kobun Chino.
Yeah. How did you meet Kobun?
Well, because I was at Stanford, and he was in Los Altos. So I moved into a house with two other guys who were practicing Zen and went to Stanford during the day and practiced Zen and Haiku Zendo in the morning and the evening. And Suzuki Roshi was still coming down occasionally. He came down a few more times after Kobun arrived.
Yeah.
So I got to see Suzuki Roshi in the house and, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And hang out with him there. But then Kobun became my teacher. And I loved Kobun. I mean, I had a very strong, deep connection with Kobun. He was really beautiful, beautiful guy. Yeah.
What? How long did you stay there? You were going to Stanford, and
I went to Stanford for a year, 71, 71. Then I went to Tassajara, and I was there for three practice periods. And so that was ended at the end of 72, right? So then, so 73, I stayed through toward the end of 76 in Los Altos with Kobun, and then I went off to the Zen Center of LA.
So what were you doing? How were you supporting yourself then?
I actually ran a little restaurant, a natural foods restaurant in Los Altos for about a year.
Yeah.
And I worked as a house cleaner for a while, and then I actually ran a bakery, Barbara's Bakery. There was Barbara's Brothers Bakery. Barbara started the bakery, and she gave it to her brother, and I ran Barbara's Brothers Bakery for about a year. These are skills I picked up at Tassajara, baking and cooking.
Yeah.
I learned with Tommy Dorsey,
he was Tenzo in 71 in the fall when you were there.
I worked in the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah, the last person I talked to just 2 days ago for this, Annie Schiffler was in the kitchen with Tommy, and she talked about how wonderful it was being with him. She said his...
He had such joy.
Yeah, and humorous.
Just delight in what he was doing.
Yeah.
He wasn't so concerned about how it turned out. I think it was the joy of doing it. I mean, it usually turned out very well.
Yeah.
But it was more the joy of the process.
Yeah. Well, he had a lot of experience behind him. And
as a cook?
No, just as a human being.
As a human being.
So he even though it was largely in the realm of wickedness, he came out of it, wise and mellow and very cool.
Right. He was a drag queen, is my understanding. Right?
Yeah, he was he was a drag queen, a prostitute, a speed freak, a junkie. They were con artists. He was a grifter.
So there's a biography of him somewhere, right?
Yeah,
Someone
David Schneider wrote Street Zen.
Okay, right. I never read that. Okay.
Yeah, I roomed with Tommy and heard a lot from him, so I can't remember what I know from the book and what I know from him.
Cool.
Yeah.
What did you do with Tassajara at that time? What were you doing?
71, I was assistant director, which was great.
With Mel.
Nothing.
Working with
Working
with Mel, right?
No, Mel wasn't director. Dan Welsh was director. Mel was director maybe in 72 when you were there.
Yeah, Mel was the director part of the time I was there.
Yeah, 72, 73. Yeah, I think Dan went to the city in 72. I was in the city in 72. And Mel was directed in 72, 73.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Loved the movie as well. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful man.
Mel was great. Right up to the end, really. I did 3 podcasts with him in the last, I don't know, couple of years of his life. They were great.
Uh,
It was
yeah.
really enjoyed. It was wonderful talking with him that much. Mm.
Yeah.
So, you got any specific memories or anything about being at Tassajara, being with Coben? Anything come to mind?
Uh, well, you know, I've got memories of being with Coben. I actually wrote a piece for Tricycle. I don't know if you ever read it. After Coben died.
Uh-huh.
It's called Remembering Coben. It's actually on my website as well, in which I, have little memories of Coben.
Good.
But Coben was like an elder brother to me. I mean, we were very close. I hung out with him a lot. I remember studying the precepts shortly after I got there. We were studying the precepts together, and that was beautiful. And my ordination, he gave me his robes. Basically, he gave me his raksu, his brown raksu. Which you're not supposed to have. Not supposed to have a brown raksu, right? Unless you're a mucky muck, right? You're a high priest.
That's funny. He gave you his raksu. I mean, that's really. This is interesting because you remember Alan Marlowe. Did you ever know him?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, he wasn't at Tassajara then.
Yeah.
But when Alan died of AIDS in 1991 or 2, his stepdaughter Jeannie DePrima was with him, and she had a raksu that matched Alan's. That Suzuki Roshi had written something for like that. That if you put the two of them together, it was like a sentence, or it made some sense.
Okay.
So
they're matching raksus.
Right. She wanted to keep Alan's raksu, and Coben said no, it has to be cremated with him. So maybe now you have to be cremated. No, just the
I still have the raksu. It's falling apart. It's a silk raksu, so it's like really delicate. The calligraphy on the back is faded. You can't even read it anymore. But yeah, it's a beautiful raksu.
Well, I have a question.
That was Coben, In fact, Coben, when you shave your head for the before you're ordained and all of that, Coben actually shaved my head for me. He did the shaving, which is beautiful. I mean, a priest doesn't ordinarily shave his disciples.
Just the last bit, right?
Yeah, he did the shaving, and he actually forgot to leave the little piece on there. So, and that's Coben. Coben is so absent-minded.
Yeah, no kidding.
Absolutely absent-minded. Yeah.
I have a question about your raksu. So he gave you this raksu. Was it blank? And then he wrote characters on it for you?
He put a blank backing on it. I think he replaced the backing on the raksu.
That's
what I did. And then he put new calligraphy on it. Yeah.
Right. So it's recycled for you.
Yeah, recycled.
Yeah, to me it's no longer his raksu. He takes that out.
Yeah, very good.
Okay. That's great. So remembering Coben, well, I probably did read it, but I can't remember it right now. And I have an extensive section on him on Cuke. I might have a link to it, but if I don't, it'll be there later.
Yeah, put a link. It's a beautiful, it's a beautiful piece because it's really heartfelt, and I have some wonderful, memories of him, to share. He actually gave a course at Stanford when I was studying with him too, called The Roots of Zen.
Yeah.
Which which he was sponsored by Ed Tripp. Now he calls himself Ted
Right.
Tripp. Was at he was going to Stanford as an undergraduate. Then he went back to school, was finished his undergrad, and he sponsored Coben to give a course on basically Indian Mahayana. It was a great course. I enjoyed it. Yeah. Because Coben, was had a graduate. He had a degree from Komazawa University, which and then he went to a graduate student at Kyoto University in Buddhist studies, and so he was a scholar, Coben, as well as a master calligrapher and practitioner of archery and all these things. I mean, he was really a classical, Zen guy in many ways.
Yeah, definitely. And a sort of poet or something. I always think of him.
And a kind of poet too.
Yeah.
And a dreamer for sure.
Yeah.
Dreamer.
Yeah. Okay. Then, all right, 76, you moved on, huh?
Yeah, it was I met Maezumi Roshi when he was visiting Koben. And I can still remember, these meetings with these teachers. I remember I was with Koben, and I was coming to meet him at Koben's house. Koben said, "Come on over and meet him." So I'm coming over and I'm adjusting my rakusu, and there's Roshi on the path, Maezumi Roshi, and I almost ran into him, and I was very struck by how rooted he was, like a little samurai.
Yeah,
that was Maezumi Roshi. Was a little tough guy, and I was impressed with that, and I was also very impressed that he was doing traditional Zen. And, Koben practiced what he called guerrilla Zen, G-U-E.
I didn't know that. That's great.
That was the term he used, guerrilla Zen.
Oh.
We don't go to a big Zen center. We don't go to a monastery. We're out in the world like little guerrillas, infiltrating into society,
Mhm.
And he didn't, Koben was, even though he went to, he went to Eiheiji, and he would have climbed the hierarchy at Eiheiji if he had wanted to, because he was very well placed and all of that. He renounced all that because he didn't like the whole Zen hierarchy, and he was very anti-authoritarian, anti-authority in his way, and so he wanted to practice something very different, and he didn't like traditional Zen. He wasn't an advocate of traditional Zen. Even though he always wore his robes. He was a kind of contradiction, which my essay talks about. Yeah. He always wore his robes. He always wore his work clothes, his traditional Zen work clothes. He almost never wore American clothes. And at the same time, he was very non-traditional. And I said I wanted to go study with Maezumi Roshi. And, he just shook his head. He says, very traditional, he said, disapprovingly. Very traditional. He didn't like it, and then but I wanted to do the whole thing. I didn't want to do the guerrilla thing. I wanted to be a Zen monk in a Zen center and do the formal ritual and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's why I went there. There was also a lot of Jewish guys there, and I'm Jewish, and felt like a real comfortable place to be, and they would support me. I wouldn't have to work, which was also nice.
How did that come about?
Well, that's how they did it back then. They supported the monks.
So, you were already a monk?
Yeah, I was ordained
by Koben. So you went there, and Maezumi said, "Yeah, come here, and we'll support you." Oh, that's great.
He always treated me as Chino Sensei. He called it your Chino Sensei student. I mean, this is the Japanese are very careful about this thing. It's like this is my territory and your territory. So I was always Chino Sensei's student, even though I studied with Roshi.
Yeah.
I don't know if Koben felt that way, but Maezumi Roshi did. He treated me differently in some way. I don't know if it was good or bad, but he treated me differently. He gave me certain special dispensations. I don't think he was as hard on me as he was on some of his other students.
Oh.
And so, Coben, I don't think he ever forgave me, actually, for going to be with Maezumi Hiroshi. He stopped communicating with me pretty much. Coben was very difficult to reach. Both when you were with him, he was difficult to reach, and when you weren't with him, he was difficult to reach.
Yeah, I was going to. You said he stopped communicating with you. Well, a lot
he
of
wouldn't
people
answer my
couldn't
phone
get him
calls.
to communicate with him at all. Even people who
Yeah,
he said he was
that's
going
maybe,
to. You,
maybe that's the case.
he would.
Maybe that's the case.
There were the Tosin Akiyama, who started a Zen group in Alaska, and he was in where was he in St. Paul? No, Milwaukee, and then he's in San Rafael now. The first two times he came to America, Kobe was supposed to meet him at the airport. Neither time did he show up. That was right.
Who is this guy? He's a
Tosin
Zen priest?
Akiyama.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, he's one of the guys who started little Zen groups and is virtually unknown, and that's fine with him.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good thing. Zen spirit. So yeah, Coben, I would call him on the phone, and he'd pick up the phone, and he'd just kind of mumble a little bit, and he wasn't really interested in talking to me, so I stopped calling him. Which I felt sad about, but I didn't take it. I did. I think I probably did take it personally, but because again, he was like an older brother to me. I mean, he was really, very. I felt very close to him, and he treated me like I stayed with him in my breaks between going to Tassajara. I stayed at his house. I don't think Harriet was very happy about that.
No, oh my God, you stayed in his house with Harriet? Wow, man.
Yeah, and
That's
the
like
kids.
Nathaniel in the lion's den, lioness's den. Very good. Well, no,
Yeah.
if you could stay there, if
She was
she
a lioness
allowed
with a
it,
heart. Yeah, she allowed it.
then she liked you.
Yeah, I always liked Harriet. Oh, we always had a
Yeah.
good connection.
Yeah, I got along with Harriet.
Yeah, no, she had a heart of gold underneath her fire. I mean,
Yeah. Well, people will ignore her, come see Coben and ignore her. And I did
she
the
got
opposite. I'd ignore him and talk to her, and
yeah,
then I'd see Coben,
yeah, yeah. I always talked to, and enjoyed Harriet quite a bit.
Oh, it's nice to hear you say she had a heart of gold. That's really good.
No, absolutely. She had a great smile, and she smiled a lot. She could be fiery, but she was actually seems like a pretty happy person.
Mm.
She took care of Coben, kind of fiercely protective of Coben and their family. And I think that's what people saw a lot.
Yeah. Bill Kwong called her the guardian deity at the gate.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
I think she kicked him out once.
Who kicked Bill out?
Yeah.
Good biddy. Yeah. She wouldn't hesitate.
No. Wow. So, you're with Maezumi. What happened? How'd it go?
I did koan study, and I rang a lot of bells. I became the doan for an extended period of time and got my share of bell ringing and chant leading and that stuff. And got to wear the robes every day and do the whole, ceremonial thing. Maezumi Hiroshi was an alcoholic.
Oh, yeah.
And, as you probably know, died an alcoholic. I mean, he drowned in a hot tub.
He drowned in a bath. I've used the same bathtub. It was a bathtub. I stayed with both his brothers in Japan.
Oh, you stayed with his brothers?
Yeah.
Oh, I assumed it was like ofuro.
No.
Oh.
This was his brother, Giulio. I'd have to look it up. I'll fill it in. in Tokyo, and
okay.
He had no fingers.
He had been drinking, right? I assume.
Oh, of course. His brother was a much worse drinker than him. His brother had no fingers, He looked like a leper from India. They were all burned off from him passing out into a what do you call those boxes with the coals in them? Japanese use.
I mean, they use for heating.
Yeah, normally I would know that. However, one of the gifts I get with age is not being cluttered with words that are easy.
Yeah, how many years did you spend in Japan?
4 years.
4 years, yeah, yeah. So you got to know the culture and the language
Yeah.
very well.
Well, I could speak Japanese when I arrived because I'd studied it intensively. It never got great, but
Good enough. Huh?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was fine. You know, I had friends that didn't speak English and stuff. But anyway, yeah, he was a sweet guy. I've stayed with him a couple of times. But yeah, and boy, did he drink. Let me tell you, he drank morning to night. And uh, so, yeah, it was a problem I assume he had.
Yeah, he had, I think that's a family problem. He stopped for a while after they confronted him, and he went to alcohol treatment, and then
Yeah,
he picked it up again. And, he died at 65. He died quite young.
yeah,
But, it was, let's just say that, what would I say? Ultimately, it was kind of very hierarchical. I didn't know about, his philandering, or his approaching women in the Doksan room, for sexual favors, that kind of thing. I didn't know about it while it was happening, but there was certainly something about the whole thing that after a while really began to smell. For me, it really began to feel like there was something really off about it.
yeah,
And there was a power hierarchy. Tetsugen was there, Genpo was there, and what I would say in retrospect, and finally, he sent me down to San Diego before Joko went down there, and I led a sangha down there
no kidding.
after 3 years in L.A. studying with Roshi. They wanted someone to lead their little satellite center in San Diego, and so he sent me down there. And I was, giving Dharma talks. I was giving interviews with people,
What
and I was
year
hanging
was
out.
that? About 80?
That was, yeah. I went down in '80, and I stayed to the end of '81, so almost 2 years, '80 to '82, basically.
Uh-huh.
I was, and at a certain point, first of all, I realized, psychologically, I needed to do some work. That I couldn't do at the Zen Center. I felt I was being boxed into a corner as a monk, put into these expectations for me. I felt I wasn't able to be myself. I needed some space.
Mm-hmm.
But, also there was, it just, I felt like I needed to break out. And there was something off about the whole thing. Eventually, I left, went back to graduate school in psychology, came back and met with Roshi several times. Because I told him I left because I wanted to go study psychology, not because, I didn't like what was going on or had any, criticism of him. I was leaving, which was true. I wanted to study psychology, so he was fine with that. I was Shino Sensei's student, after all, so he didn't feel he had the same kind of control over me that he would have with another student. He might have been more controlling,
Yeah.
so he let me go. Then I came back subsequently a number of times, and we would just hang out and talk. And what I realized about Roshi, and I'll tell you another story about Roshi as well, but what I realized about Roshi, and this is before
You mean you're talking about Maizumi Roshi?
Izumi Roshi, yeah.
Yeah.
What I realized about Roshi, and this is before what came out about with Chozen and the breakdown of the center, when they admitted to having an affair together and everything, blew apart. That was before that. And Roshi was, I would say, put on my psychology hat, Roshi was severely narcissistic. And all of his students were narcissistic. His primary students. Genpo was narcissistic. No, but I mean really narcissistic. I mean, not just, garden variety narcissistic. I mean, really narcissistic personality disorder, narcissistic.
Yeah.
Genpo, again, both of them. Okay,
And did
and,
Tetsugen?
and I'm privy from the inside to all the damage that those two, did to the people who studied with them. I've had as clients people who studied with Tetsugen who treated them like shit. And there was a whole series of people that Tetsugen just manhandled because of his desire to be in charge, and to build his center and to Grayston Bakery and on the backs of these people. And Genpo too. You probably know more about Genpo, traveling around the world, having affairs, using the money from these different centers and basically blowing the centers apart and leaving them in shambles. He did that in a number of different places.
Yeah.
And because these are people who, you could even say verging on the sociopathic. No, seriously,
Yeah.
I say this with utmost seriousness.
I really
as a
appreciate
psychologist.
your
I don't have
saying.
many opportunities to say this.
Yeah.
These are people who didn't care about other people.
Yeah.
They didn't care they were oblivious to the suffering they were causing.
Yeah.
That's what sociopathy is. So, and I think Roshi was in that basic vicinity.
Yeah.
He didn't, he was drinking, so of course that blinded him to what he was doing. But how can a teacher, and then of course Aiken Roshi talks about this at great length, who was such an upholder of Zen ethics, how can a teacher in the guise of being the one who's helping people realize the Dharma, in that guise, wearing those robes, in that role, come on to a student or abuse them or treat them in any way other than with the utmost respect? How can you do that if you've taken vows, and precepts? Who does that? And of course it does happen.
Yeah.
But we have to understand how that happens, because it's like, as you can tell, I feel very strongly about this. I've talked about this at great length. Buddha at the gas pump, I have an interview about this. I've written about this. I don't know if you ever saw my article for Tricycle, which they never published, about Maezumi Roshi and Chozen and the whole affair.
I'll put it on Q.com. I'd love to.
Oh yeah, please. I'll send you it's on my blog, but I'll send you links to it.
Yeah. Anything you want me to feature or anything like that, I'll do that.
I think these are, Tricycle decided not to publish it, even though they had assigned the article to me, and even though they paid me for it, and they liked it, they approved of it. They decided not to publish it because they thought this topic has already been completely well covered. This is in 2006. And since that time, of course, numerous other Buddhist teachers have been revealed to be abusing their students. Mm-hmm. So the article, the topic had not been properly covered. But in any case, it's a topic that it's a perennial interest. And it's about sex, it's about power, and it's about what is enlightenment and what is awakening if it doesn't translate into our, enlightened activity, right? Mm-hmm. And what is it?
One thing though about Maezumi, and I just had a friendly relationship with him. I found him to be completely honest when he talked with me, and he admitted everything.
Nothing honest about him.
Well, all right. In his dishonesty, he seemed to be acknowledging what he did, saying it's outrageous. I shouldn't have done it. It was terrible. And with drinking, he cried and said, I'm an alcoholic. And I have known.
Went back to drinking.
Huh?
And then he went back to drinking.
Yeah, because he's an alcoholic. Listen, I am not a member of AA, but I'm right in the middle, because I don't drink. I've had a drink 20 years. But I'm right in the middle of all the AA, Al-Anon 12-step stuff in this area of Bali. And so I'm very familiar with it. That happens to a lot of alcoholics.
It's good to hear that.
They go back.
To hear that. Yeah.
But I've known, so when you're talking about this sort of narcissism and sociopathy, I've known other teachers who had that who didn't at all admit they'd done anything
That's
wrong. So at
yeah.
least, see, in my
That's
view,
Gimpo.
talking to
That's
him,
Gimpo. Yeah.
uh,
Okay.
and he was in a documentary where he admitted everything and said it was terrible.
Yeah.
So he's a little
Zen-
bit better. He gets a little gold star on his narcissism and sociopathy.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear. See, the story I was going to say was a number of years later, after I'd been gone from the Zen Center, I hadn't seen Roshi for a while. I went to a conference where the Dalai Lama was attending. It
Yeah.
was actually the year he won the Nobel Peace Prize. So that was sometime in the 80s, mid 80s. And and the Roshi was there. And I went to a talk he was giving at the conference. And he said, "Oh, Iko, so good to see you. Let's get together for tea." So I said, "Okay, wonderful, Roshi." So I went back to his hotel room. It was, in a conference center hotel. And, he invited us in for tea. So my wife was there. My wife at the time was there. We went in, we were having tea. And, we were chatting. And then I brought up, I brought up Joko to him. And because Joko had kind of split with Roshi after what happened with Chozen and kind of repudiated, in a way, her connection with Roshi. I think you probably knew that.
No,
And
well, I sort of knew it, but it's better. I don't assume I know anything.
yeah, yeah.
I know a
So I
hodgepodge
think,
of stuff.
as I recall, she had, I don't think she denounced him, but she sort of quietly repudiated her relationship to Roshi. And I mentioned Joko. And Roshi got really, really angry. And he started fuming and talking about Joko and. And my wife is sitting next to me. She's looking at me. She's like, what's going on here? She didn't know who Joko was. This guy's getting really angry. So I said, "Roshi, it seems like you're a little angry, about." He said, "I'm not angry." He said, "I'm not angry. I'm not angry. It doesn't bother me at all." And my wife and I looked at one another, and we kind of beat a hasty retreat.
Uh-huh.
We left as soon as we can. It's like, what are you going to do? The man doesn't acknowledge he's angry.
When you left Maizumi's place, where did you go?
I went back to the Bay Area from Southern California,
Mm-hmm.
from San Diego, and went back to start living in Berkeley. Met with actually Joe Cohen, got together with Joe Cohen, an old Tassar friend, and we shared a house together with, what was her name? Blanche Hartman's daughter, I believe, at the time. It was way back.
You don't mean Mitzi?
I think it was. Yeah, I believe
Mitzi?
so.
Far out.
I believe so.
Now
So
there's
anyway,
Trudy. There's Trudy.
Trudy. It was Trudy. Yeah.
Trudy. Mitzi's the one that
Trudy.
became a famous porn star.
Oh, okay. No, it was Trudy. It
Yeah.
was Trudy Hartman and Joe Cohen. These are people I didn't know well, but they were Zen people. So I got together. We shared a little house on Stewart Street in Berkeley. And I started, I went back to work. I worked at actually Yoshi's as a waiter
Wow.
for a while because I knew one of the people, Hideo Korematsu, who was a student of Kobin's, was a friend of Yoshi's, and so I
You
got
mean
a job
Ekai?
there. Yeah, I guess so. Is that his name?
Oh yeah, that guy. Oh yeah.
They called him Hideo in fact. Hideo Korematsu.
I
Yeah,
never
yeah,
heard Hideo. I knew him as that guy in Japan. I was in
okay.
a temple with him.
Okay.
And he's in
what
New
happened to him?
Zealand now, I think.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, lovely guy.
Yeah.
And so I, waited tables at Yoshi's, and then I started doing some editing. That was my training. I was editing books for, publishers and things like that. So and then I went back to school, and I eventually over time. Then I got the job at Yoga Journal. I was the editor of Yoga Journal for 10 years, 84 to 94.
Oh,
Editor-in-chief of Yoga Journal.
when did Peter Warshaw go to Yoga Journal?
I don't know that Peter Warshaw worked at Yoga Journal. Not that I was there.
Oh no, Peter and Rick were good friends. I get them mixed
Yeah,
up.
Rick came after me. Rick succeeded me.
Yeah, yeah,
Rick and I were old friends from
yeah,
the Zen Center, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
But see, Rick and Peter were very close, and I knew them both pretty well, and they both
Okay.
died too young, and so I get
Yeah,
them mixed up.
yeah. Rick was a dear friend. Yeah, he took over after I left, and
Yeah.
then by 1990 I got my master's degree and I became a psychotherapist. That's what and then I left Yoga Journal, and since then, mid 90s, I've been doing psychotherapy, and then started teaching, more. Then I met Adyashanti, I met John Klein, 88,
All right. Yeah. All right. Now,
1988.
yeah. I'm gonna. So John Klein, you met in '88. Where did you meet him?
Through a mutual friend, through a friend who was a student of his,
Mm-hmm.
who I had known through the Buddhist community, and she introduced me to his work, and he was giving a weekend in Berkeley, and I went to see him and was struck by him. The language that he used was not Buddhist language. It was a little strange to me at the time, but I really resonated. And again, when I met him face to face, I had this very powerful, sense of him as a person, really someone who was really empty of, really of a separate self. Who really you could really feel that, which is so unusual. I felt that with Suzuki Roshi. I mean, I would say Suzuki Roshi was like that.
Yeah.
Of course, I was so young. What did I know? But
um, you said John Klein was Advaita Vedanta, right?
yeah, he studied in India.
Where?
Yeah, we met. He went to India, at the end after the war. He was in the French Resistance. Went to India after the war, just kind of curious to find, looking for something. As he said, looking for I forget how he put it, but a fundamental principle underlying. Right? He was a European gentleman, I think. Well schooled. He was a musician, a musicologist, trained as a doctor.
Wow.
And he went to India, and then he met this Sanskrit professor at a little college in Bangalore, back when Bangalore was a small town. Of course, Bangalore now is a huge tech capital of India. But so he met this guy, and he studied with him for a while, and then eventually, after a few years, woke up, And eventually, the teacher said, go back to Europe and teach. So he went back and started offering, teachings
Where?
in France, which is where he had moved. Yeah,
Where was he from?
he was originally Czech, but I think his family moved to Germany, and then and he went to school in Germany, I believe. Graduated from German universities, and then once Hitler came to power, his father was Jewish. They moved to France. He moved to France, and it was in the French Resistance, actually.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think he ended up in the south of France. My understanding was he was living in Provence, near Grasse.
Mm. Mm. Wow. Mm.
Yeah.
So, but when you heard him speak in Berkeley, he wasn't living in Berkeley.
No. He would come once a year to the United States for a couple of months. And he actually stayed in Santa Barbara. They had a place in Hope Ranch in Santa Barbara where they rented a house while he was in town.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I met him, he had something of a American following, and they had enough money to support his staying down there. And he would come up here, and then we would go down there. He gave retreats at Mount Madonna. he gave retreats at the Institute of Mental Physics in Joshua Tree, and we would go down there and spend time with him, like a week
Hmm.
at a time.
Yeah, I like the way you say he'd come up here.
Right?
When you
Up
said
here,
that,
right?
I thought, oh, he went to the Canary Islands.
I'm still back there. Most of my friends are still in the Bay Area.
Yeah, yeah, it's
I'm on
funny.
Zoom a lot with my friends.
All right,
Yeah.
so you now you said he was your principal teacher at some point, I
Right.
think.
My root guru, as they
Your
say,
root
right?
guru. All right. Now you've had a very impressive trek here through different teachers, and
Right.
that seems to me like got a great deal from each of them. You had a propensity for this. It seems to me.
I had some wonderful teachers. I feel very grateful.
Yeah.
Maizumi Roshi is the questionable one and all of that, but I know Roshi's, one of the things I always felt about Roshi is his heart was in the Dharma, and it was very heartfelt. In fact, when I went to his talk at that conference, one of the things that struck me was, how deeply he felt, and I thought, oh, gee, I want to reconnect with Roshi, because he really felt deeply about it. So I certainly felt that with him.
Yeah.
I just couldn't approve of his other activities.
Yeah.
But he had some wonderful teachers, Kobun, Suzuki Roshi, uh, and Jean Klein.
Yeah.
And I also hung out with Trungpa.
Oh, what? Tell me about Trump. You what?
I had, for some reason, Trungpa was in my orbit.
How'd that
Uh,
happen?
I don't know. First, I met Trungpa in 1970 at the Zen Studies Society when he first came to the United States.
Oh.
This young guy, must have been 30 years old or something. He walked into the Zendo, sat down on this seat, not on a zafu, but on a seat. He had been, he was crippled, he was somewhat crippled, as you know.
Yeah.
And he sat down, he gave the clearest talk I have ever heard in my life in perfect English. And I thought, who is this guy? And, subsequently I went out and got all his books that started coming out, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, The Myth of Freedom. We used to listen to his talks on reel to reel, back in the day. And then when Suzuki Roshi died, he became a good friend of Kobun's.
That's right.
And so he used to come and hang out with Kobun. And one of the stories I tell is at a friend's house, a fellow student of Kobun's, Sonia Margulies, the two of them were together. And, I think they were drinking probably a little sake and hanging out. And they decided to do some calligraphy together. Of course, Trungpa was very interested in calligraphy, as he was, of course, in flower arranging. He was a master of flower arranging. And they started trading calligraphy. And so Kobun would do something in Japanese, and Trungpa would do something in Tibetan, right? So Kobun wrote the names of Trungpa's children in Japanese. Trungpa wrote the names of Kobun's children in Tibetan. They kind of went back and forth. And then at one point, Trungpa writes, mindfulness is the way of all the Buddhas, right, in Tibetan. And then Kobun sits down and writes, great no mind. To me, that was like the epitome of Kobun, right?
Yeah.
Mindfulness is available, and Kobun is like, throws the whole thing off the board, And of course they laughed.
Yeah.
Of course they
Yeah.
totally agreed, but great no mind, right?
Yeah.
So that was the Kobun Trungpa connection. I mean, they had fun together.
Yeah.
And then in '74, I accompanied Kobun to the first summer session of Naropa Institute, at which Trungpa was holding court, right?
Yeah.
And I could hear his teachings there on a regular basis. And, we got to, reading his books, seeing him with Kobun, being at the summer session. There was a strong connection. And then I was with Roshi, Maizumi Roshi, I was Maezumi Roshi's attendant for a period of time. He was Jisha. And he went back to Massachusetts when Trungpa was on retreat. They rented a house for him. He was on a year retreat, Charlemont, Massachusetts. What retreat meant for him, another story, but anyway, he had his attendants. So I accompanied him on 7 days of visiting the Trungpa in Charlemont, Massachusetts, in his house, and I was basically Roshi's attendant, and I was there with the two of them while they talked and did their thing, and they did calligraphy together. Trungpa did flower arranging, Japanese flower arranging, and they would start drinking at noon and drink well into the night, and my job was to pour the sake. So. Seriously, and I don't remember much of that. What I do remember, though, is really, people talk ill of Trungpa, and I get it, because he did some, but there was something about this guy's presence that was amazing.
Yeah.
There was something about him. I felt the compassion that even though he didn't act in, something, there was like he generated this bodhicitta, which was really profound.
Yeah.
I never experienced that before.
Yeah.
So as crazy as he might have been, you've probably seen the film Crazy Wisdom about Trungpa, which is excellent film, but I think he was an amazing master, So I will never speak ill of Trungpa, but I won't necessarily contradict other people. But it was something out of order from Maezumi Roshi.
Yeah, yeah. What about Richard Baker? Did you ever know him?
I had just one practice period with him, and that was it.
Yeah, and?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was very interesting to listen to it being, the Dharma put in very clear English language, not, Katagiri, who I was there the 2 practice periods when Suzuki Roshi wasn't, who I liked, of course, very much, loved Katagiri, beautiful, beautiful guy. Again, also felt his heart for the Dharma as well. But Dick Baker, very clear. I can remember some of the things he said. There are no easy chairs anywhere, he said. These are the little quotes that stick in my mind. There are no easy chairs anywhere. One of the things he said, he said, waking up is like coming down from Mars and seeing the world for the first time, as if you were from another planet. I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. So, these little things, but I enjoyed him.
Yeah.
Didn't have any strong reaction either way.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So, all right. Now, John Klein, I can see where you were and where Suzuki was and where you were and where Koben was and where you were and where Maezumi was. But you and John Klein, how long did that go on, and how often did you see him, or in what way did you study with him or study?
He was my, when I say guru, he was my teacher. Everything he wrote, I read. I didn't read anything else. I just read Jean Klein. I listened to Jean Klein. I was devoted to him as a teacher, And he didn't demand devotion or ask for devotion at all. He was exactly the opposite. One of the great things about Koben, because I had been with Sogyal Rinpoche for a while, and with Sogyal Rinpoche,
Oh my God, there you throw in somebody new.
Sorry, I studied with Sogyal for 3 years. I went to retreats with him, and
what years?
That was probably 83 through 85.
Far out in France.
Because I actually met Sogyal Rinpoche at Reb's Mountain Seat ceremony.
Oh.
That was in 82, I believe.
Oh. Well, I'm sure I was there.
You were probably there. Sogyal was there,
Huh.
and I chatted with him afterward.
No. Reb's mountain seat would have to be more like 84,
Okay, maybe it was
85
84.
even.
What, his mountain seat?
Yeah. Reb's mountain seat. See, Dick left in 83.
Ah, okay.
And then
Well, it was
Katagiri came and was an interim abbot.
okay, good.
And it
Thank you
took
for.
the board some time, to choose Reb. And so, I don't know exactly.
It was something. It was some ceremony at the Zen Center.
Right.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
But it was
Oh,
before 85.
well, I think
Because
Reb's mountain seat was before 85. Yeah.
yeah. So it was, in any case, some ceremony.
Well, all right.
And I met Sogyal. He was this kind of young, again, a young guy, and very articulate. Of course, spoke perfect English, and we were chatting a little, and I forget what I was saying to him. And at one point, he said, he put his hand on my heart and he said, "The true guru is inside you." And I thought, wow, I like that.
Yeah.
I like this guy. So again, there was a connection. I started studying with him. And this is when there were 30 people at his gatherings. I would go down to Aptos in Santa Cruz and hang out with him on a regular basis. I took refuge with him, got a Dharma name, and did a number of retreats with him, Dzogchen retreats.
And he was living in the Bay Area then, or near.
I don't know if he was living, I think he went back and forth, but I think part of the time.
When you say back and forth, you mean to France, right?
No, I think India.
Oh, he wasn't in France yet.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't know where he was, actually. I don't remember very well.
Yeah.
All I know is, quite a bit of time, maybe 3 long retreats with him over a period of several years.
Yeah.
And gatherings, workshops. The thing about, so I studied with him for a while. But the true guru is inside you. I really appreciate that, and took that to heart. I think that's a beautiful teaching. Ultimately, of course, he turned out to be the worst of the worst.
Worse than Edo?
Have you read the book or seen any of the material on Sogyal? Oh yeah, you probably don't want to.
Yeah, no, I'd like to sort of know in general, but I.
You don't want to know. It was really seedy. I mean, really, really seedy.
Yeah.
And in fact, judging by what I've read, he probably was somewhat of an imposter. He didn't have he was associated with certain great masters, but he did not have the training that he claimed to have. I liked his energy. There was a joyfulness about it, but I did start noticing his anger, which I had seen with Maezumi Roshi as well, getting angry at students, lashing out at them. And I thought, this isn't good. And then I started noticing how he was treating the women, students. At this point I was really sensitive to it, and I thought, there's something wrong here.
Yeah, I have heard that. I've heard he was really abusive.
He was treating them, he was demeaning to them, he didn't treat them well. And at a certain point I wrote him a letter, actually, because it was so disturbing to me. I wrote him a long letter, he never responded to it.
Well.
And then I left.
So, when you said you left where?
I stopped studying with him.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah.
I left his organization.
Yeah.
I stopped studying with him. Just, because I felt there was something out of integrity, After, I think, Maezumi Roshi, I started, being my radar. I was a little, up for this kind of thing,
Yeah.
Anyway, but with Jean Klein, nothing like that, and no. And the thing about why I brought up Sogyal was Sogyal really. The fact that I was the editor of Yoga Journal meant a lot to Sogyal. He really liked that I was the editor of Yoga Journal because it was a position of power for him to have a student who was the editor of Yoga Journal. I could really feel that with him,
Well, I feel
like
more powerful knowing you and knowing that you were the editor and publisher, editor of Yoga Journal.
Yeah, right. I never felt powerful, but I hopefully helped some people in doing it. But anyway, Jean Klein, I felt there was no interest in my being his student. I felt, what a wonderful gift, It was like, he could care less, It was like, you come, that's great to have you. If you don't, there were no students of Jean Klein,
So what years were you studying and meeting with?
88 to 98, so about 10 years.
Wow.
I was a devoted student. The final 3 years, he had a series of strokes, and so he was pretty much offline the final years of his life. He wasn't really actively teaching, but I considered myself his student until he died in 98.
That's very interesting. I know the name. I knew nothing about him, so I appreciate your saying that.
Right.
So I know you had contact with Adyashanti.
Right.
You know Michael Katz. You remember Michael Katz?
I know Michael Katz. He and I have, had long phone conversations.
Yeah.
I was kind of involved in the early days with Byron Katie.
Oh, yeah, right.
Michael is very, very involved with Byron Katie as well.
Right, yeah.
Are you good friends with Michael?
He's really my best friend.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you're still in touch with him, send him my regards.
Yeah, we hardly communicate.
Oh, okay.
But I'm just a product of Michael. Everything I've done is his suggestion, saying, now I think you should do this. And we don't really communicate that much, but it's always very good. And we used to play tennis. And
it was cool.
I met him,
I
met him when I was 75 or 76. I think I might have met him in 76 in when he was with Bill Thompson in Lindisfarne in Long Island or somewhere there. We always got along. Anyway, he told me he met Adyashanti in Mill Valley when you and Adyashanti were there, and he enjoyed that. I remember him saying that. Do you remember that?
Great. I don't remember that. It was in Marin, probably not Mill Valley, but maybe San Rafael. But yeah. Unless he was. No, I remember. I think he was meeting with Michael about some book-related stuff, probably.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember. Now I remember. Right. Yeah. I do remember. It was just a few of us together.
I mean, he described it was just you and Adyashanti and him, but he doesn't elaborate. He's like the opposite of me, I'd go on, I'd be off on so many tangents, I'd forget that I was talking about.
Yeah, no, I do remember that. In fact, it was in his house, in Michael Katz's house.
Yeah, and he had a house in Mill Valley there for some years.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, very nice house. And he's been, in Nevada City now. From that house, he got married with Joe Wonderly, Jenny back then Wonderly, and they live in Nevada City.
Right.
And
cool.
Anyway, that was just a little aside.
Regards, we just lost touch as well.
Yeah. One thing about knowing Michael is people would get hold of me about books. In fact, they still do, wanting to get to Michael, right? And Helen Dwarkoff, who I like, and anyway, she was trying to raise money for a tricycle, and she called me up and, well, let's have lunch. Why don't you and Michael come? Let's have lunch at Greens or something. I went, okay. So I talked to Michael. He said, I don't have lunch. I went, oh, okay. And I told her that. She said, oh, okay, never mind.
Oh dear. You don't have the power. You don't have the lunches.
Yeah,
that's why they call them power lunches.
My power was only knowing Michael.
Right.
And yeah. So, but anyway, my whole point in bringing that up is tell me about how did you get to meet Adyashanti? I've gone and heard Adyashanti. I really like him a lot. Years ago.
Yeah. No, again, a friend introduced me, just like with Jean Klein. A friend said, you gotta hear this teacher. So again, I drove down there to Palo Alto, and this was a gathering with like 6 or 7 people. This is way back before he became popular.
Yeah.
And one of those people was his father, actually. I immediately resonated with Aja. And because what he was teaching was really, and it wasn't deliberately this way, but it came from his own experience, but it was really a blend of Advaita and Zen.
Yeah.
In fact, he called his original website was called zensatsang.org, because he came from a Zen background. He studied with Bill Kwan quite a bit. He studied with a student of Maezumi Roshi, a lay student, Arvis Justi, in Los Gatos. But had a series.
You mean that's a woman, right? In Los Gatos?
Right.
That's who he started with, I think.
He started with Arvis Justi, right?
Yeah. And then,
She
but
was
he didn't do
student.
sessions maybe or something, so he'd do those.
Then he went with to Bill's place for sessions.
Yeah.
And but mainly he had his own some very powerful awakenings of his own, and then he started to teach in a way that was unique to him. What he has said, which I think is true, if you truly wake up, you wake up out of a tradition. Because you can't be bound by the tradition any longer. You're what you're being guided by is your own realization.
Yeah.
And whether it accords with the tradition or not is no longer the point. This is what you've realized. This is what you know to be true. This is what you teach from. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where he was coming from, and it was very clear and very obvious and very refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
And again. What struck me about Aja was how deeply he felt about it. I remember, again, there's always something with these teachers that really gets me. With Aja, it was, he gave a talk on, second or third time I saw him. There's a place in the 3 Pillars of Zen where Kapla Roshi has these stories about this woman who had these series of awakenings, and Yasutani Roshi is approving of them. It's a part of 3 Pillars. And he was talking about these stories and commenting on them, and he started to cry. Adyashanti started to cry because he was so moved what he was talking about. And I thought, this is someone I could study with, This is someone I can study with because of his deep feeling, his deep devotion to the Dharma, to the truth, So I started, just like I did with Jean Klein, started doing everything he was doing, Every retreat he offered, I did it for a space of 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. And I met with him individually, which you couldn't do after a while. And I had a very powerful awakening experience with Jean Klein in '89. and that experience continued to reverberate for years, and it can show. And then, but I never quite felt like I was clear, And then working with Ajo over those 2 years, things kind of really fell into place. So my doubts kind of fell away, and I felt like, yeah, got it, And so I said that to Ajo. He said, good,
I remember something I read you wrote, you talked about having some awakening experience while you're driving. Now, the way I picture it, I don't know where you were, but I picture it on 101 north of San Francisco. But anyway.
Close. It was, actually. I think it was 101.
Yeah. Actually. Well, maybe I remember that from you because I have a picture of it. And you were sort of like exploding and driving. Tell me about that. Remind me about that.
Well, again, it was actually during a retreat, and I had an appointment that I had made before the retreat. Before I'd scheduled the retreat, I had to go to this appointment. And so I'd been at the retreat for 2 or 3 days, and it's a 6 or 7 day retreat with Jean Klein. And I'm driving along, and suddenly, and this is how the direct approach works. It's not so much about doing regular meditation in certain ways in order to have certain results. It's more serendipitous and kind of mystical, magical sort of process, mysterious, where the right phrase at the right time, like in the old Zen stories, you hear those turning words, at the right time. So I'm driving along, and suddenly what he had said a number of times, the seeker is the sought. The looker is what he or she is looking for. That went through my mind, and suddenly the whole thing, revealed itself. Huh?
Say it again.
The seeker is the sought.
Yes.
And the looker is what he or she is looking for. You are what you are seeking.
Yeah.
And so it kind of revealed itself in that moment. It was like, oh, okay, click. So that it became very clear, and it's like your whole world turns inside out. You realize that you're not the inside, but you're the outside, and what you thought was the outside is the inside, and that kind of stuff. And I had a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of Kundalini, which I'd never had before and I've never had since. But then I, there's a lot to say here. I'm in the middle of writing a book, about a lot of this stuff. Not so much my experiences as the teachings that go along with all of this, but there's a lot of fear because it was like the ground fell out from under me. There was no ground anymore. No self, no ground.
How was your driving? Did you keep driving?
No problem. Driving was not impaired. Always good to hear that. I always tell people that because people think, oh my God, if I wake up, something's going to happen. Mostly things, ordinary everyday things remain more or less the same,
Yeah.
So no problem with the driving. Kundalini was a little distracting, but
That's great.
I wonder what those Zen guys would do. They didn't drive, fortunately, but maybe the ox cart would have strayed off the road.
Right. Mm.
But anyway, so that was that. But then there was a lot of fear. So I couldn't understand what the fear was about. Well, this is awakening. This is the truth. I've just awakened. How come I have so much fear? And I would sit, and there would be the sense of the openness and the groundlessness and the vastness, and then there'd be there'd be all this fear happening, or alternating with there'd be fear, and then there'd be this, and I didn't understand it. And so I think I pushed the awakening to the background because the fear was there and didn't know quite what to make of it. And then over the years, I kind of worked it all out, more or less. It's still, and it's something I'm going to write about in this book, I think, when you have a powerful awakening, it can be really scary. And for parts of ourselves, we're very complex creatures. There are different parts in the psyche, and you can have a very genuine awakening at multiple levels, and then there can be a part of you that's saying, shit, I don't know, man, this is really scary. There's no, and that can be happening, and it's still a genuine awakening. It doesn't negate the awakening. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about this, so I'm trying to bring my psychological understanding to bear on this whole process.
Yeah, yeah.
And I get this with students periodically. People who come to me and say, yeah, I had this powerful awakening, but I haven't been the same since. I'm scared. It was really scary. Or I got to the edge and looked into the abyss and couldn't go there. It was just too scary. And I think it's a very much more complex than we think, and there hasn't been a lot investigated or written about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was in prison, which people who knew him well were happy he was in prison. But he was a very deep thinker, and he wrote really fascinating letters. And he had a deep experience that he said he just couldn't take it, and he'd been involved with Buddhism and yoga for many, many years, and he just said, well, he couldn't admit, he was sort of split. He didn't realize things he'd done,
You mean think ways he'd hurt people?
Yeah. When he came,
that's one of the things that awakening will often do. It'll rip away the repression barrier.
Yeah.
And all kinds of stuff comes flooding into the psyche. That's a whole nother story, but
Right.
that's also very important.
Yeah. His name was Rene Pate. He died. Very tough people I know said, hey, if you meet Rene, if my name comes up, change the subject. I mean, this is like people who work in the Tenderloin with difficult people, and he had a lot of people scared. When he came to Green Gulch after he'd been in prison for years and years, and I had sent messages to Mel and various people, to the Abbotts and people that Renee's coming back. You should deal with it now. You should communicate with it now before he comes. But they didn't. And so he came to Green Gulch and he sat down. It was equinox thing, spring equinox. Right, he sat down with me and my son and we talked. And he said, I guess they know why I was in jail in Florida, because my lawyer got a letter saying I shouldn't go to Zen Center property. No, that hadn't happened yet. But he said, I guess that there was something negative so far, like they don't want him around, but it hadn't become legal yet. He said, I guess they know what I did in Florida. I said, no, Rene, that's not why. It's because you threatened people's lives. And he said, what? I did what?
He didn't know. He didn't remember.
Didn't know?
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
when he had some experience, you mentioned that, then that he could be confronting with that and go, no, I don't want to admit that.
Sure. No, it's, awakening is a live wire. It's an unpredictable experience. You can't control it. So, don't go after it unless you're ready to, sacrifice everything.
Right.
And face what it offers, because awakening is, it's a wild card.
Yeah. So, the Adyashanti, do you have anything more to say about Adyashanti? I just always thought he was so clear. And
he's a beautiful teacher. He's and the way I teach is very similar to what the way Ajay teaches. In fact, we haven't been in touch in a while. We've stayed in touch over the years. We haven't talked in a while. I don't read what he writes. I don't listen. But when I every now and then check in, he's saying the same things that I'm saying, even after many years. So it's like we're really very aligned in how we teach. He was the one who gave me Dharma transmission,
Right.
And I feel, Coben said, I talked with Coben about transmission a number of times, and he said, my teacher said to me when he gave me Dharma transmission, be like me and don't be like me.
Yeah.
That was very interesting teaching, right? Be like me, don't be like me.
Yeah.
So at one level you're like your teacher, on another level you're completely different, right?
Yeah, right.
I imagine what I'm doing is different from Jean Klein, different from Adyashanti,
Yeah.
but it's the same essence. So
Yeah. Well, Suzuki said, students all the time, they just want to copy your faults and bad habits and stuff.
When did you meet Suzuki Roshi?
66.
66, that's what I thought, yeah. How old were you?
21.
So you're a couple of years older than me. Are you just turning 80?
I'll be 80 in February.
February, yeah.
You're looking forward
70s.
to it. I'm enjoying I love getting older. It's great.
I'm enjoying it too. I'm very grateful.
I do. Boy, it's Richard Baker was just saying to me, a lot, and he's 88, he's enjoying it, but his body annoys enjoying it,
Right.
and.
You're still in touch with Dick Baker as well?
Oh yeah. I'm going to Germany. They're flying me to Germany he's stepping down finally. I think finally he's really letting somebody take over. And Nicole sort of has. Nicole Bond, she's great. Really great. America and Germany, and she's young. She's like 40.
Was she Dharma's successor?
Yeah. Oh, and he's just so happy with her, and that really feels good about it. And he's had a rough ride through all the years, and who's responsible for that?
Dharma.
Yeah. But boy, has he stuck with it, yeah. So, all right. Now, I wanted to ask you one thing about Adyashanti. How's he doing now? What like you said, at some point, people didn't see him individually.
He retired. You know that, right?
Well, yeah, but I'm vague about it.
Yeah, he retired. He finally, I think, he's just been going so full bore, and he gives so much to his teachings and to his students. It grew very fast, and so he couldn't do the individual interviews. He would, when we would chat, he'd say, I really wish I could do more individual interviews. I really wish I could go back to that, but I just can't. There's so many people wanting to be with me, so it grew very fast, exponentially, because he's such a clear teacher,
Yeah, that happened to Suzuki too.
Suzuki Roshi as well. Yeah. And so finally, I think he just got worn out. He's in his early 60s still, but he had some health issues. He had a chronic pain problem that was really difficult for him, and he was in excruciating pain a lot. They finally figured out what it was. I think it was he was taking some kind of medicine or using some kind of product that was causing some problems. They didn't know what it was, and so I think that really wore him out eventually. So he's really stepped down. He's not teaching anymore.
When did he retire?
About this time last year, maybe September 11th.
Very recently.
very recent. Yeah.
but he
He took a year off. He took a year off before that,
yeah. That recently.
and then he retired.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But he's okay now?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in touch with his wife, Mukti, and she said he's cocooning. He's taking this time to cocoon. He's taking this time to really, kind of go for walks in the Sierra where he lives, which he loves to do, and be by himself. And he's very introverted, always has been. I think all the students and all the demands on his time and attention, for an introvert, that's not easy.
Yeah.
You wore him out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
recouping.
now, how does someone contact you, relate to you? Now you've got. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a therapist. What type of therapist?
I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California, but I'm not actively doing psychotherapy anymore. First of all, I don't live in California anymore. I'm doing spiritual counseling.
Yeah.
Which is, I say, a blend of counseling and mentoring, in which I help people, work on the awakening piece, guide them in that process, at the same time working on whatever gets in their way, seemingly, of awakening or of living from their awakened understanding in everyday life. The psychology that may be an obstacle, seem like an obstacle to them. So we'll work on that. But I don't generally now do ongoing psychotherapy with someone, like weekly sessions or something.
Yeah.
There's obviously a psychological component, but I don't call it psychotherapy anymore. But it's informed by my training. But I'm not even doing that so much anymore. I'm mostly focusing on my teaching. I mean, I see maybe 8 people a week, 8 hours a week. And the rest of the time I'm teaching, I'm leading groups, I'm, doing a lot of teaching.
Well, now, how does someone benefit from this?
StephanBodian.org.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, in the podcast, that will be in the metadata, it'll be in the introduction, it'll be in the conclusion.
So this is going to go up on Cuke.com, huh?
Well, it goes up. You can get to it through Cuke.com, but I don't have any video. Well, audio. I don't keep audio or video in Cuke.com. There's a little smidgen of it, but I link to it.
And where do you publish the podcast? Do you have one of those accounts?
Yeah, it goes up on Podbean, and then it goes to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Cool. It's available on Amazon. I don't know why anybody would buy it. You get it free. But a number of Deezer. I don't know. I try not to pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, I'm partly asking because at some point I would like to do a podcast as well. I think these podcasts are great. And there are a number of people I'd love to have long conversations with, like you and I are having. And I think it's very rich for people to listen in, and share, to hear us sharing our understandings and stuff like that. So
yeah, I love doing it. And Michael Katz got me to do it.
Got you into it.
Yeah,
Right.
He got me to make audiobooks and do this. Like during COVID, that's right. And I love doing it. And I'm just finishing up a book called Tassara Stories. That's
great.
so long that I'm just sending out as a book the first year. I'm sending something of a reasonable length. I think I'll call it Tassara Stories the first year. I'm just getting ready to send it out. So the whole reason I said that is I don't have time to talk. I got to keep getting this book ready. And then I talked to Annie on Tuesday and you today, and I love it. And it's so great. It's like getting out of myself. And it really makes me appreciate people. Before I talk to you, I just got like this snapshot of you and it's not you,
I,
right?
we've
It,
never really had a conversation
y-
or a long exchange
no,
of any kind,
no,
really.
we've just been
Just
around each other, and
yeah, we just kind of vibed together, as they say.
yeah. But then it just I really appreciate people, and
Yeah.
I've but it's not just the podcasts. I've interviewed many, many, many people before then and talked to them, and I get things, and I have all these communication with people, you know, and I don't really feel it's inferior to being with them, going over and bothering them at their place. I know it
Uh,
is, but
yeah, no, there's something about being together in person, but I think the Zoom and even the phone calls can be very intimate. I
yeah,
work with people that way, and it can be very intimate
yeah.
uh, as well.
And
And do you have a partner there in Bali?
yeah, my wife, Katrinka, we've been together since 2004.
And you were in Thailand, weren't you, at one point?
No, I remember you said, but yeah, I've been in Thailand, but not for long periods, for a few months at a time. Uh,
Ah, okay.
Katrinka and I were in Thailand when we first came. We came here in 2013, and
Ah, okay.
we wanted, I had a little bit of money. My mother had died. Her ex-husband had died, who she was taking care of, so we were free. And I said, our money will last a lot longer if we go to Asia. So
Uh,
we went to
well, that's when
Asia.
you asked about the Canary Islands. That's one of the reasons I came to Spain.
What's
It's
it
a
like
lot
there?
cheaper. It's a lot cheaper to live here, believe it or not. Much cheaper to live and especially the Canary Islands, very cheap to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, not like Thailand or Burma. I mean, or Bali, but probably, but
Well, I don't know.
cheap.
I, I don't necessarily think this is better than being in Canary Islands or somewhere in Mexico. I mean, very low crime rate is good.
Yeah,
Extremely low crime rate. Like
yeah, that's great.
not as low as Japan, but pretty close, especially where we live. So, how
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
get to the Canary Islands?
Well, Spain. I have relatives in Spain, actually. My father, who I never met, but he had family in Spain, so I've been in touch with them and visited them a number of times. And I wanted to live near water and live more cheaply. And in the United States, living near water is very expensive, near an ocean,
No kidding.
and it's so expensive. I owned a house in Tucson, Arizona, and it was expensive. The mortgage was expensive. It was hot and dry. Didn't like it. Wanted to get out of there, and then came to Spain and discovered, whoa, Spain is actually beautiful, and it's not that expensive,
That's what I hear.
and I had just enough money to get a visa.
Wow.
And I could show some income, and I had just enough savings to get a visa. That was in 2019, and I was in mainland Spain for 5 years, actually 3.5, Costa del Sol, and then I wanted to be a little warmer, so I came down here, and it's lovely. It's an island surrounded by water. It's
Can you
beautiful.
swim in the ocean?
Yeah, you can. It's not super warm, but
Yeah.
it's this time of year it's starting to get warm.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
Do people go in the water in Bali? I know the Balinese don't swim much, but
well, they go in the water, but
yeah, they
it's
don't.
not only the Balinese that don't swim, because I swim. And we live, 15 minutes from a nice beach, uh, and which is more expensive than living further in, but it's actually extremely cheap.
Yeah,
It's just more expensive than if you live in, and we got
yeah,
our rent locked down at uh, what it really should have. We're paying sort of rates that would have been 10, 15 years ago or something. Uh,
yeah.
and but anyway, yeah, I go to the ocean. I swim. Balinese love to go to the beach, and they like to go into the water, but they sit and they stand. An occasional Balinese will swim. and but it's pretty much the same with tourists. Tourists don't. Most people don't. You know,
That's
there's very
right,
few of
yeah.
us. Darling, hey, come say hello to Steve Bodian. We're still doing the podcast talk, but we're on Zoom.
What time? Where is he? What time?
He's in the Canary Islands.
Oh, and what time is it?
Right now it's just about 11 or something.
Hi.
This is Katrinka. Can you see her?
Barely, but good to see you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's dark because of the lights behind you.
The lights in the wrong direction. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So, yeah, I really like that. I also like. I don't want to leave. I have never gone back. You know.
right.
You went there 5 years ago from where?
Tucson, Arizona. I owned a house in Tucson.
I tried to get you to come to my friend. You know, one of my oldest friends lives in Tucson, and I tried to get you to come to a little party we're having, very few people, and you couldn't come then.
Oh, when was that? Must have been a long time ago. Huh? Yeah.
20 years ago.
Oh, 20 years ago. I wasn't
Hey.
there 20 years ago.
15 years ago.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, we've only been here 11. Yeah, oh yeah, 15, 14 or something. Yeah, I wanted
Years
you
ago.
to meet him, but not enough to follow up on it, I guess. But yeah, I wanted to see you, but you were busy, you know, you're a busy
Yeah.
guy.
I have a condition called multiple chemical sensitivities.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And getting together with people is very difficult, actually, as is traveling, which is, which has affected me at multiple levels in the material world. So, a lot of restrictions on what I can and can't do.
I remember that now. I remember that. Yeah, but I mean, I think maybe you're sort of like in the place where I am, that I don't really want to travel, you know.
Don't need to. We went to mainland Spain in May for a week, and that was lovely.
Yeah.
Not very far, a couple hours away.
You say we. Who's we?
My partner. I'm actually here in the Canary Islands. I met a lovely German woman, and we are now partnered. So.
Oh, well, good for you. Good for you. All right. Well, I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, great talking to you, David. Let's stay in touch, whatever that means.
Yeah. Is there anything in conclusion you could think of to say?
No, I don't think so. It's nice to talk about the old Zen days.
Yeah.
I do think about them sometimes. I think, for me, whatever I teach, comes from my own experience. But I have to say that for me, the teachers that I've had, as I mentioned, are just so present for me, and I feel so deeply grateful to them for their teaching and the opportunity to study with them and their inspiration. And so, whatever I do is just passing along, what I receive from them, So I really like
that's
to.
nice. Well, you've been a very diligent student, and you're
Stubborn.
Huh?
Stubborn.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, I hate to say goodbye because I've enjoyed it a lot, but until we meet again,
Sounds good, David.
thanks
Take
a
care.
lot.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Been great. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. That was very, very good. I really appreciated it. That was good. It was great talking with you. And I'd like to reiterate that it's not that I didn't appreciate you in the past. I did. But I appreciate you so much more now. You've come to life so much more for me. And that's one thing I love about these podcasts. And I would like to mention to our dear listeners, if you'd be so kind to help support the work we do at Cuke Archives, these podcasts, the various expenses, including keeping me eating and under a roof, which is the main expense of Cuke Archives, I'd say, is just, me not living out on the street with a begging bowl. Would appreciate a donation, would appreciate you becoming a subscriber. All you have to do is go to cuke.com and hit the donate button, and that'll tell you what to do. You can make a donation with PayPal, with a credit card, or by sending a check. And it's all right. Just hit the donate button. Cuke.com or ShinyuSuzuki.com. It's on the home pages, but it's other places too. We throw them all over. But don't do much fundraising. I should do more. I'm going to start getting hardcore at fundraising, just constantly mentioning it, constantly sending out emails. No, I don't do that. I really don't want to. I send out like one a year. We don't have a department for raising money like some places do, and that really works. We should just raise money to buy a big building. I think we could raise more money if we do that. Show a picture of a big building and just hire people to sit in there and look like they're very productive. And then I think we can get all sorts of money for that. But before we get our act together enough to do that, would appreciate a little help for our shoestring operation. Thank you very much. This has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Dog and Bandita, Fila Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.